yeni tip koronavirüs pandemisinin üretimin yavaşlaması, talebin azalması, işletmelerin kapanması ve işsizliğin artması gibi birçok olumsuz ekonomik etkileriyle karşılaşmaktayız. Bu etkilerin giderilmesi amacıyla hem Türkiye hem Avrupa Birliği hem de üye devletler kapsamlı paketler açıklamışlardır. Bu sürecin olabilecek en az zararlı atlatılmasında birlik işletmeleriyle ülkemiz işletmeleri arasında işbirliğinin artırılması yoluyla ekonomilerimizin canlandırılması önem arz etmektedir. Sayın Büyükelçim, bu kapsamda son günlerde siz de takip ediyorsunuzdur. Türkiye'nin ithal ettiği ürünlerin pek çoğuna yeni ek gümrük vergileri uygulanmaya başladı. Buradaki amacımız yurt içinden tedarik edilebilen ürünlerin yurt içinden tedarik edilmesi, Çin'den olan ithalatımızın kısıtlanarak bunların Avrupa Birliği ülkelerine, Avrupa mallarına yönlendirilmesi. Yani Avrupa Birliği ile ticaretimizin daha geliştirilmesi açısından Çin'in önüne bir takım engeller koymaya çalışıyoruz. Maalesef dünyanın en büyük tedarik merkezi haline gelen Çin, aynı zamanda dünya içinde ciddi bir bu virüsle birlikte ciddi bir risk haline de gelmeye başladı. Bununla ilgili önlemler alıp biz de tedariklerimizi ve pazarlarımızı bize en yakın ülkelerle yapmak için çalışıyoruz. Bu kapsamda Avrupa Birliği ile yapmış olduğumuz Gümrük Birliği Anlaşması, sizin de Avrupa Birliği Anayasası ve bizim de kanunlarımızda bazı çelişkiler yarattı ve bunların tekrar bir güncellenmesiyle birlikte aradaki sürtüşmelerin, gri alanların açıklığa kavuşturulması ve aynı zamanda bu ticaret hacminin karşılıklı olarak geliştirilebilmesi açısından da bu Gümrük Birliği'nin ilk yapıldığı zaman da acaba bu yürür mü diye şüpheyle baktığımız bu anlaşmanın aslında çok da güzel çalıştığını gördük. Bunu geliştirmenin biraz daha revize ederek çaresine bakmamız gerekir. Bu tarz işbirliği ve daha etkin ticaret mekanizmaları ile gerek ülkemiz 2023 yılı için ortaya konan 11. Kalkınma Planı'nın ise benimsenen hedeflere ulaşması, gerekse birlik tarafından 10 yıllık kalkınma planı olarak hazırlanan Avrupa 2020 stratejik önceliklerinin gerçekleştirilmesi mümkün olacaktır. Sayın Büyükelçim, benim söyleyeceklerim şimdilik bu kadar. Ben müsaade ederseniz arkadaşlarımı size tanıtamadım. Onları da tanıtayım. Ondan sonra zaten elinize bırakayım sözü efendim. Efendim benim önümdeki ekrandaki sırayla size tanıtıyorum. Taner Bey, Taner Özdemir, inşaat sektöründe aynı zamanda Türkiye'nin İç Anadolu'daki sorumlusu kendisi. Hemen yanında Birol Duygu kardeşimiz var. Birol Duygu da imalat sanayinde çalışmakta. Savunma sanayine ve diğer sanayi kuruluşlarına yan sanayi hizmetleri de bulunmaktadır. Yavuz Bey'i biraz önce tanıdınız. Doçent Doktor Yavuz Cabbar Bey şu anda bizim genel sekreterliğimizi yapıyor. Aytaç Bey şu anda herhalde telefonla görüşmek için kalktı. O da ilaç sektöründe ilaç fabrikaları var. İlaç üretiyorlar. Musa Ertuğ Bey araç üstü ekipman üretiyor. Yönetim kurulu üyemiz o da. Aynı zamanda savunma sanayine de çalışıyorlar. Faik Güngör Bey yönetim kurulumuzun en genç üyesi. Faik Bey tekstil sektöründe özellikle bayan giyim üzerinde, abiye giyim üzerinde üretim yapıyorlar. Ercan Atabey bize Eskişehir'den katılıyor. Şu anda orada kendisi bir fabrika ziyaretinde. O da mobilya üreticisi. Aynı zamanda Türkiye Odalar Borsalar Birliği Mobilya Sektör Meclisi Başkanlığı'nı da yürütüyor efendim. Efendim benim sözü size bırakıyorum. Buyurun. Yavuz Işık Bey'i ekranda bir ara kaybolmuştu. Yavuz Işık Bey meclis başkan vekilimiz. Kendisi de inşaat sektöründe hazır beton üreticisi efendim. Buyurun Sayın Büyükelçi.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for this very kind invitation to be with you today. And thank you for this opportunity to talk about important issues, both for the Ankara Chamber, but also for the European Union and our cooperation, as you have yourself just pointed out how important this is also in the future. I'm very happy to see all these distinguished guests who are with you, your board members and other members of the Chamber. And thank you, Professor Jabal, for the introduction that you have just made, and also Professor Özdemir for your Mr. Özdemir for the first words that you have spoken, the explanation that you have given, the overview you have given about the trade relations. So many figures that you have pointed out to are very telling and are very important also for the future, for now, but also certainly for the future. Now, let me perhaps say a few things about the European Union's situation at the moment and the response, and then to the COVID crisis, and then maybe we can also talk about the point that you also raised about EU-Turkey relations also in the trade sector, and then perhaps a few words about also about future endeavors and how we want to get out of this and cooperate on this issue. But before doing all this, also let me highlight the cooperation that we have had with the Chamber. With the Chamber of Industry, with the also Technical Vocational College, which I had the pleasure of visiting a little while ago in Chinzan. So these are all very important aspects. As you know, we are putting a lot of emphasis on education and on training. I think what you do is you're really in the forefront of this, particularly in promoting vocational training. And I hear this not only from your chamber, but from many chambers across the country that see a need to increase vocational training, because they are the ones representing companies. They are the ones who know what the needs are for the companies and can pass this on to the educational system. So this cooperation, this collaboration between professionals, practitioners as you are, and the ones who are training and educating young people is for us very important, and certainly we would like to encourage this and supporting as much as we can. But there are also other projects that you are running, like the testing and certification centers for vocational qualification, which obviously goes hand in hand with what you're doing in education and vocational training itself. And you do this in particular for metal and machine manufacturing, CNC programming, installation and maintenance of elevators, hydraulics and pneumatics, as well as all kinds of welding. So this is simply, these are examples I want to highlight of this cooperation, because there is a much broader background to this. And the broader background to this is the harmonization process that Turkey has gone through with the European Union, as you yourself have explained. And I hear very often from companies that I visit anywhere in Turkey how important this harmonization process has been, how important it has been to incorporate standards and regulations into the Turkish legislation, how important it has been for companies to apply those standards, to be monitored, to be certified that they're applying the standards, because this gives them an edge on the global market, not only on the European market, on the global market, because these standards are recognized and as important standards internationally. So I think we have seen success there, and the support that we also give to growth and industry and companies like small, medium-sized enterprises, but not only, also small, medium-sized, small farms, for example, have certainly had a strong impact on the relationship between the European Union and Turkey. And for me, if you ask me, after 4 years now in Turkey, for me, this is the backbone of the relationship between the European Union and Turkey. With all the figures that you have mentioned on trade, certainly very important. But this relationship, this harmonization relationship, I think is very important, and we really must preserve and even expand as much as I can. With this very short introduction and also our cooperation with ASO, let me talk a little bit about the European Union and what we are facing at the moment. So like everybody else around the world, we are facing a strong impact. We're facing a strong impact not only on the health system and the health structures. And as you know, many of the measures that we have taken and now impacting the economy were taken because we wanted to protect the health system. We didn't want an overburden of the health system. We didn't want too many patients that had to be taken care into intensive care units. there was a fear that the health systems in many European countries or across the world actually would not be able to cope with this. But I think we have been relatively successful, and certainly Turkey is a good example for that as well, with a very resilient health system that has managed to absorb the people who were sick, and has also, with great success, kept the number of people who succumbed to die because of the crisis very low compared to the overall population figure. So this is, I think, a very important lesson. I come to this in a few minutes when I talk about lessons learned. But the economic measures that have been taken, the impact that we have seen on the economy and on social structures have been enormous. And I think we are now entering a period where we are trying to get out of this. And we simply look at the figures. So from a relatively expansionist growth rate that we see, so in the last 2 years, for the first time, we are heading now for a minus growth rate in the European Union, but also with our partner countries in Turkey. Very, very significantly on trade. So there we see a sharp decline compared to previous figures on trade. This can be up to 10-16% in the European Union. Similar figures we hear for Turkey. We also see a decline in growth between 5 and 7%, depending how you calculate the figures. For the first time, we see an increase in unemployment to about 9%. And when you look back to the speeches that the President of the European Commission used to give at the State of the Union speeches in September, he was always very proud, the previous Commission President always very proud to say that we have reached the highest number of employment in the European Union, with more than 250 million people in employment. So there we see, of course, now a decline of about 9%. And we see also a decline of a growth deficit to about 8.5% when it comes to the GDP of the European Union. So all this obviously has impacted the performance of the economy, and we see this partly because of the restrictions in the European Union itself, but partly also because we see an interruption of the supply chain. The production supply chain. I think the point that you made, and I come back to this in a minute, that you made, that we need to bring certain goods and the production of certain goods closer to home, so to speak, closer to the what is the customs union, meaning the European Union together with Turkey, is certainly an important thought. And it's an important thought because it goes hand in hand with this concept of preparedness, to be better prepared to deal and cope with a pandemic or with a crisis of that nature. So there is a lot of uncertainty in trade, but not only that, the uncertainty of trade that has been sparked by the coronavirus is, of course, compounded by trade tensions that we have seen even before the crisis started. Trade tensions between big trading blocs across the world, the United States, China, Europe, and Turkey somewhere in the middle here. But certainly it has impacted the performance of our companies and the overall figures of trade. In addition to that, as I mentioned, was the halt of movements, the halt of shipments, the halt of transportation. In many cases, also the halt of production itself. And we have seen this in strategic areas, which again is reason why we need to consider what we do in the future. Back to back with this with the situation, it's not only a reduction in production; it's also a production in demand. So you come from all sides. You see from all sides that this repercussions on trade and on the economy needs to be really now considered and factored in, and what to do. So there has been, if you want me to summarize this, a global downturn in the economy and a global downturn in trade, in particular, with a strong impact on the supply chains, with all the consequences of unemployment and reduction of trade, and reduction, which is also important for the relationship between the European Union and Turkey, reduction of capital flow, of direct foreign investment and similar methods of capital flow. Now, where are we now? In the first few months, so let's say February until April or May, we were dealing with the immediate impact of the crisis. So this started from very practical things like bringing people back home, We have cooperated here also with Turkey, making sure that people could leave Turkey. And also now lately, we have even helped with the European Civil Protection Mechanism to bring Turkish citizens back from countries like from Central Asia or from Latin America. And as you know, Turkey is a member of the European Civil Protection Mechanism, and therefore was entitled to use that. And indeed, they have done it. So this was one of the very simple practical things. Another one, also practical, was to make sure that the flow of trade will not be interrupted. So we came up with this concept of green lanes, making sure that trucks can go across lanes. We had some issues at the beginning at the Bulgarian-Turkish land border, at the Greek-Turkish land border. We have overcome this. We have had very productive conversations with the Minister of Transport, with the Minister of Trade, and with other authorities to make sure that this flow of goods can be maintained, with all the restrictions, obviously, and with all the health provisions that need to be taken. But I think we have managed that this flow of goods can continue. We have also stepped up our cooperation on health issues. And here I give you one example that it happened 3 weeks ago. We had a European Union-sponsored international conference in raising funds for finding a vaccine for the virus. And Turkey took part in this. President Erdogan gave a speech, sent a video for this conference, and Turkey also contributed financially to finding a vaccine. So we have to see now how this money that has come together, which is about 9 billion euros, how this can be used in the most successful and efficient way to find a vaccine, because many doctors will tell you, out of the many sort of methods that we need now to employ to fight this to fight this disease, vaccine or cure is certainly one of them, in additional, of course, to other health precautions and other measures that we all know that are being employed at the moment. Another very practical issue that we had to discuss was the export of protective personal equipment, the so-called PPE. Where Turkey is, as we all know, is a very big producer, and Turkey has also very generously donated masks and other equipment to countries who needed that. But also companies were buying from Turkish companies, and we had to make sure that these contracts were being honored, and this flow, despite of the restrictions, and of course, despite the demands that Turkey had itself on this equipment, that this could go. Because for us, apart from the contracts itself, apart from this equipment itself, for us this was also a more long-term reinforcement and strengthening of the credibility and liability of the business contacts between European companies and Turkish companies. I think we have been successful again with the help of the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Trade to make sure that contracts are honored and the shipments are being made. So there has been a lot of very practical work, as I've said, with our Turkish interlocutors. Now, what do we want to achieve in general? First of all, when it comes to trade, we continue with our policy of promoting open and predictable trade. And I think Turkey is a very important partner in this, in upholding multilateral institutions, including the WTO and all the regulations and all the structures that we find in the WTO in addressing trade issues or trade disputes. So this is simply one of the examples where we cooperate very closely with Turkey to make sure that these structures remain in place and we can have open and predictable trade. Secondly, moving now to more of the activities and the initiatives that we take in the European Union itself. Now we, as I said, we have moved away from the more, or we have moved on. I would say maybe it's a better expression. We have moved on from the more practical, immediate aspects, crisis fighting, crisis management aspects, to a more long-term recovery process. So we do this with two principles in mind. One is resilience. So strengthening and the structures that deal with the impact of the crisis or any potential future crisis, and preparedness for any potential future crisis. So that's focus number one. So focus number two is to come back to sustainable growth. And here the European Union has issued or has proposed an initiative which is called New Generation Europe. When you look at the various figures and the support, the financial support that we are now mounting, it comes up to close to 4 trillion euros. Now that is of course composed of different elements. One element is a massive procurement program of the European Central Bank, procurement of private and private and public securities. A second one is a massive investment program in small, medium-sized enterprises by the European Investment Bank. A third one are many sectorial support measures by the European Commission. And this ranges from transport, airlines, for example. It also includes an easing of the deficit rules of the European member states. So the member states can spend their national budgets to a higher degree in fighting this economic impact. Secondly, we have also eased the state aid rules, so countries can now support industries, and we have just seen this in the case of airlines, which were of course very much hit by the crisis, and we see this in other structures as well. So there's a whole package of support that now goes into the economy. At the very same time, we need to see also what our partners are doing, because European Union is not isolated. I mean, it's a big trading bloc, yes, but it's not isolated. We want to trade with our partners, so we also want to see how our partners across the world are doing, and there has been a separate package has been reserved for third countries in support of their structures, and again, very much focused at the moment on health systems and healthcare systems. So it's as I said, it's a very broad proposal by the European Commission. Part of it already approved by the member states. The latest proposal by the European Commission President is 750 billion package, which is partly loans, about 500 million, and partly grants, about 250 million. This still needs to be approved by the member states of the European Union, but it's going in the same direction. A massive investment by the EU. Now, what are the practical sides of that? One is the so-called Green Deal, which is an idea that was already around half a year ago, or before the crisis. Which means a very moving to ecological industry, ecological transportation, ecological form of energy, and investment that goes hand in hand with that. So investing in companies, investing in technologies, supporting firms that are working on these issues in order to reach certain ecological goals, environmental goals of the European Union. For example, an environmental friendly European Union by 2050, completely removing the having carbon neutral emissions, and some of those goals we have already reached. For example, the gas house emissions are now far lower than we actually predicted. And when you look at the figures, we also see a decoupling at the moment in Europe between economic growth and the use of fossil energy. So we have a much faster growth, economic growth, compared to the use of fossil energy. So that's the future. So the Green Deal is trying to reinforce this notion. A second aspect of the Green Deal, and I see a lot of interest also in Turkey on this, is the digital transformation of business and economy in general. So, of course, the last few months have been an interesting learning experience and a very steep learning curve, because many companies and many businesses had ready to do this, had to move to a more digital operation than they ever did before. So again, a lot of support will go into this in terms of creating new industries, in terms of creating new research and technology. So Green Deal and digital transformation of the economy will be the two main sort of driving forces or practical driving forces of these ideas that were presented by the European Commission a little while ago. So what you see now is both challenges and opportunities. And I think we should really we should deal with the challenges as they arise, but we really have to embrace the opportunities, because there is now a chance of either make the economy more ecological, or make the economy also under the heading of preparedness and resilience stronger, and make the structures more stronger. Let me close with a couple of figures, and my apologies if I repeat some of the figures that you have mentioned, Mr. President. Indeed, the relationship between the European Union and Turkey in the trade sector is very strong. The European Union is the biggest trading partner for Turkey. Turkey is among the top trading partners for the European Union, both when it comes to export and import. But the important thing is that many Turkish companies are part and parcel of the European production and supply chain because we are in the customs union, and many of the industrial products fall under the customs union, and therefore this is as we discussed earlier on, an incentive to relocate some of these production lines to Turkey because it's part of the European chain system in any case. And secondly, it is, of course, from a strategic point of view, much safer to have these products relocated to Turkey or the European Union. We need to address some of the trade irritants as we see them. You mentioned one of them is the higher sort of number of tariffs on goods that we have seen in the last few weeks and months. I understand the rationale behind it to protect Turkish production, but we also take good note of what the Minister of Trade keeps telling us. These are temporary measures until we overcome this current situation. And there are some other non-tariff issues as well that we are addressing with the ministry. At the point that many people are making, and I'm sure many of your members are making, is the upgrading or modernization of the customs union. Indeed, this is certainly something that we have not forgotten. It's not a secret that the European Commission has proposed a mandate to the member states. We start negotiations on the upgrading of the customs union, but for political reason, this mandate has not been granted yet to the institutions. But the message has been very clear that if we were to go to the upgrading of the customs union, this would be a win-win situation for both Turkey and the European Union. And I hope we can see some movement on this in the future. But I hope we can see some movement in addressing some of the problems that we have been facing in the existing customs union. But of course, a customs union has been in place for so many years. Obviously, is bound to face some problems and some issues that need to be addressed. I mean, as you pointed out, this is a customs union that has been in place now for almost 24 years. So, what I think the European business community is very well aware of is how strong the entrepreneurial skills are and the abilities are in Turkey to adapt to changes and adapt to challenges and adapt to a changing opportunity, but also to grab, as we said early on, to grab opportunities. I know, and I mentioned this, there is a very strong interest among Turkish small and medium-sized enterprises to go down the track of digitalizations. And we have seen a lot of interest in this in the last few months. Of course, this has to do with the crisis itself. So all in all, I think the Turkish industry, Turkish business community will certainly rise to the challenge of this current impact of the crisis. This is very much appreciated, very much aware, I think, in European business circles. So therefore, this relationship between Turkish and European business community will remain and will remain strong, and hopefully will to a more sustainable future after we are over this COVID-19 crisis. So, Mr. President, let me thank you for being able to speak to you today. We have been in contact over the last 4 years with many of your colleagues as well, and we really hope that very soon we can resume these contacts also in a face-to-face manner as we used to do in the past. So again, thank you very much, and please, if you have any questions or comments, I will be very interested to listen to you.
Sayın Başkanım, sesiniz gelmiyor.
Özür dilerim. Sayın Büyükelçim, çok teşekkür ederim. Bana birlikte yapmış olduğumuz çalışmaları dile getirdiğiniz için çok teşekkür ederim. Bizim oradaki sürekli eğitim merkezimizi, mesleki test ve sertifikalandırma merkezimizi, okulumuzu beraber gezmiştik. Bunlar da Avrupa Birliği'ne çok büyük katkıları var. Bunlar için ayrıca Teşekkür ederim. Sayın Büyükelçim, bu COVID krizi bize bazı şeyleri dikkatimize getirdi. Bunlardan bir tanesi sağlığın ne kadar önemli olduğu ortaya çıktı. İkincisi ise benim biraz da üzerinde çok durduğum, biraz özel bilgi alanım da olduğu için bu kriz süresince insanların hayatlarının yavaşlamasıyla beraber doğa da kendisini yenileme, tamir edebilme imkanına kavuştu. Aslında bu konunun üzerinde durulması lazım. Avrupa Yeşil Mutabakatı 2050 bu anlamda son derece önemli bir karar. Türkiye olarak da biz gerek ağaçlandırma konusunda gerekse yenilenebilir enerji kaynakları konusunda ciddi yatırımlar yapıyoruz. Oldukça da iyi bir konuma geldiğimizi tahmin ediyorum. Önümüzdeki dönemde yeni açılacak hidroelektrik santrallerle birlikte daha da iyi bir konuma geleceğimize inanıyorum. Bu çevreyi korumamız ve Avrupa'nın bu dünyayı koruma, insanlığı koruma, çevreyi koruma yaklaşımının önümüzdeki dönemde rekabetin şekillendirilmesi açısından da önemli bir avantaj sağlayacağına inanıyorum. Efendim dijitalleşme dediniz. Evet, yani bugün artık bakın dijital ortamda insanlar çok daha rahat bir şekilde bir araya gelip daha büyük topluluklara hitap edebilme fırsatını buluyorlar. Bu bizim iş yapma şekillerimizi de değiştirmeye başladı. Bu bağlamda Ankara Sanayi Odası olarak biz de McKinsey ve UNDP ile beraber Endüstri 4.0'la ilgili işletmelerimize eğitim vermeye başladık. Çok çarpıcı sonuçlar da almaya başladık. Bu çalışmalarımız da beraber devam ediyor. Bir de Ankara Sanayi Odası olarak Avrupa İşletmeler Ağı'nın da üyesiyiz. Ve mümkün olduğu kadar KOBİ'lerimizi Avrupa Birliği'ndeki diğer KOBİ'lerle çalıştırmak, onların ürünlerini tanıştırmak, onları birbirleriyle iş yapmaya zorlamak için de çabalar sarf ediyoruz. Sayın Büyükelçim, ben müsaade ederseniz ilk önce yönetim kurulu üyelerimizden soruları varsa onları alayım. Yavuz Bey de bize dijital ortamda soru aktaranların sorularını bize aktaracaklar. Evet.
Başkanım arzu
Başkanım
ederseniz.
önce ben
Buyurun
başkanım önce
Özgür Bey'i ben tanıtıramadım. Geç kaldı. Onun için
Evet,
cezalı efendim. Özgür
evet,
Savaş
tamam.
Özüdoğru da yönetim kurulu üyemiz. Aynı zamanda Türkiye'de TBM üreticisi. Tek TBM üreticisi. Buyurun Özgür Bey.
Dear Ambassador, thank you very much for attending this Zoom event. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz katılımınız için. Ben özür diliyorum bugün geciktiğim için toplantıya. Çünkü bir denedim, önce görüntü yoktu. Sonra bir çıktım, tekrar girmek zorunda kaldım. Ben soruyu şöyle sormak istiyorum. Salgın süreci tüm devletlerde ticari eşitsizlik ve ekonomik güven konusunda yeni bir misyon yükledi. Bütün ülkelere aslında. Ama Avrupa Birliği sanıyorum bu noktada öncü olduğu için bunu özellikle Sayın Büyükelçime sormak istedim. Avrupa Birliği bu sürece nasıl bakıyor ve yeni normali nasıl şekillendirmeyi planlıyor? Bu konuda Sayın Büyükelçimizden bilgi alabilirsek çok memnun olurum. Çok teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank you very much for this question. Obviously, this concerns all of us at the moment. There are two aspects of that. On the one hand, what you talk about the new normal, and on the other hand, addressing inequality. Let me start with inequality. Now, what we are trying to do with the Green Deal is a good example for that, because of course the Green Deal would affect different parts of Europe in a different way. I mean, there are some parts of Europe that are still very much dependent on fossil fuel. There are some parts of Europe that are still burning coal or even mining coal. So the message in the Green Deal is that nobody, neither individual citizens nor regions of the European Union, should be left behind when we are now promoting this Green Deal. So you will see in the budgetary allocations under the Green Deal, as it was proposed by the European Commission last week in the European Parliament, this is being taken into account. So those areas that have been hit hardest, those areas that need to do a lot of investment, they will get support from the European. So this is a way addressing the issue of inequality. Secondly, the whole area of education will come to the forefront now to make sure that people can cope with the situation, that new trades can be learned, that this digitalization, as I mentioned before, can spread in an easier way. So these are all measures that should address inequality. Now, the new norm, or the new normal, as you call it, difficult to say what that is. And I had a number of discussions also this morning with some doctors and professors in Turkey who are asked the same question: how do you see this? I mean, they came obviously from a scientific point of view, from a health point of view, and underlined the importance of behavioral changes. So how we interact. I mean, this whole thing about physical distancing and wearing masks, and in order to prevent the spread of the virus. So I think as long as that is needed, I'm sure this will be a requirement, and this will be a way of addressing the situation. How long this will last, and if the new normal will become then the normal also for a long period of time, I think is very difficult to predict. You can also see it in some industries that are really hit by this virus, and that is tourism. So all the efforts that are underway now to make sure that tourists can safely travel, either by taking certain measures on the planes or at the airports, or airlines are taking measures, from hygienic measures to the way you book, the way you don't print anymore a boarding pass, but you only have an electronic boarding pass. I mean, these type of things we will see. If you remember, after 9/11, a number of measures were introduced by airlines that are still around today. So they have become a new normal after the incidents in the year 2000. I mean, all the security measures that we are seeing have become, in a way, a new normal when you travel today. And I guess now you will have a new layer that will address health concerns. So this will be part of this new normal. The other one is tourist destinations. So will it be a new normal that we need certificates for hotels that they are now free of the virus? Do we need a new normal to make sure that people can be treated, can be tested when they arrive in a tourist destination? So all of this, I think we will need to see how this is going to develop in the next few weeks before we can say that this will be really a normal in the future. But certainly, lots of people are thinking about this, and lots of people are evaluating the impact of that so-called new normal on their industries.
Sayın Başkanım, ben de soru
Thank you very much for your valuable comments, Mr. Ambassador.
Büyükelçim Taner Özdemir Bey söz istiyorlar. Taner Bey buyurun.
Sayın Büyükelçim,
Please.
Merhabalar. Öncelikle sağlıklı günler diliyorum. Saygılarımı sunuyorum. Dilerseniz önce kendimi tanıtayım. Adım Taner Özdemir. Ankara Sanayi Odası Yönetim Kurulu Sayman Üyesiyim. 35 senedir inşaat sektöründe altyapıda çalışıyorum. Aynı zamanda Almanlarla ve İngilizler ve Doğuş'un ortak olduğu TÜSÜD araç muayene istasyonlarını işletiyorum Ankara'da. Zaten size bir iki sorum olacak. Cevap verirseniz çok mutlu edersiniz bizi. Birinci sorum Sayın Büyükelçim, salgın döneminde çıkardığınız en önemli sonuçlar nelerdir? İkincisi de benzer bir durumla karşılaşmamak adına ya da daha hazırlıklı olmak için yapılması gerekenler nelerdir? Bunların fikirlerinizi öğrenmek istiyorum. Şimdiden teşekkür ederim cevaplarınız için.
Thank you very much for the question. The biggest lesson from this pandemic, I mean, it depends on the level of my answer. If it is a international or international cooperation answer, I think the biggest lesson here is we have seen a reinforcement of the principle of cooperation and solidarity. That only when you are hit with a crisis of this magnitude that has spread around the world with this speed, has really hit every country around the globe. We need to stand together and work together, exchange views and research, technology, make sure that the trade functions, the trade continues, make sure that people can interact, be it with this channel, like the internet or these webinars, or in different other means. So I think that's, for me, lesson number one, or the most important lesson, that it has reinforced the necessity of international cooperation and solidarity in dealing with something that has really hit the entire globe. The second, if you break it down more to a personal level, I think my most important lesson is that things can be overcome. So let's not lose our spirit. Let's not lose our optimism. Because this is the worst, and let's not become cynical, or let's not become, ironic about things that we see in the press and that we hear about this disease. But take it seriously and respond to it seriously, but without losing, I think, our spirit in general. So this is again something very important, because you need to be able to work, you need to be able to address this. You have a family you have to care for. So on a personal level. This is also quite important. Now, for the next time, this is an important point that you're raising here, because this is exactly what the European Commission is looking into at the moment, is strengthening structures and to be better prepared in case this may happen. And you all know, you all have seen these reports on TV or in the press, that we may be hit by another wave, we may be hit by an after wave, we may be hit even by a different disease. And when you look back to 10 years, actually, you can see it has been building up. Because you had SARS and MERS, and you had different diseases where the fatality rate compared to the infection rate was pretty high, much higher than this one. But this one is spreading much faster and more globally than the previous, because the previous diseases stayed in one part of the world that didn't really spread to the entire part of the world. Or you had the Ebola crisis 4 years ago, in West Africa, which again stayed where it was and didn't really spread, but it was very frightening, because again the casualty rate, the fatality rate was very high. So making sure that our health systems are ready for this, but I would go further than that, because a health crisis is one crisis. There might be other crises. We might have a climate crisis, we might have droughts, we might have food scarcity, we might have many different types of crises that hit us now. And given that we have an ever-growing population, it is very important that we be able to cater for this ever-growing population. So we need to strengthen our systems, our response systems. I used to work in crisis management and crisis response, and I think this was the main lesson then. You need to be ready. You don't know what's going to hit you, but you need to have at least the resources at your hand, different models, different tools. So one advice would be broaden your toolbox, have more tools in the box than you have now, in order to deal with different types of crisis of this global nature.
Sayın Büyükelçim, teşekkür ederiz. Sağ olasınız. Verdiğiniz bilgiler için. Teşekkür ediyorum. Evet başkanım.
Teşekkür ederiz Sayın Büyükelçim. Musa Bey, siz söz almak istiyordunuz herhalde.
Başkanım, teşekkür ederim. Sayın Büyükelçim, ben biraz olayın sanayici tarafından bakmak istiyorum. Bu konudaki fikrinizi öğrenmek istiyorum. Bu salgın sonrası tedarik zincirinde yeni şekillenmeler olacak tabii ki. Burada Avrupa Birliği'nin Türkiye'ye bakış açısı ne? Yani Türkiye'nin Avrupa Birliği'ne tedarik zincirinde nasıl bir konum alabilir? Ya da Avrupa Birliği ülkeleriyle biz ticaretimizi arttırmak için bu konuda virüs salgından sonra nelere daha dikkat etmemiz gerekiyor? Hangi konularda kendimizi geliştirmemiz gerekiyor? Bununla ilgili bir fikrinizi almak istiyorum. Bir de hani Avrupa Birliği'ne üye birçok ülkenin Çin'de ciddi üretimleri var. Yani burada tedarik zincirinde bir yer değiştirme olur mu yeni süreçte? Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you very much. I think in our previous discussion with the president, and he mentioned this as well, it's very clear that Turkish companies are part and parcel of the European supply chain and production chain. And this is because of the customs union that was established 24 years ago. And this, of course, is limited to the current scope of the customs union. So in your case, industrial goods, which is important. And I think when you look, when you talk to European companies, they very much appreciate the role that Turkey or their Turkish counterparts, or Turkish companies, the Turkish suppliers are playing in this chain. So therefore, I come back to what I said early on, and those are partly in answering of your question. We must avoid anything at this very moment that can damage this credibility and this reliability that you have built up in the last 20 years, which is very much appreciated across Europe. And again, it is certainly our interest as institutions, but also your ministries, to make sure that this relationship, the strong relationship between Turkish and European companies, EU-based companies, remain. Now, improving, I think we need to continue down the same track as we have done before. So by applying the necessary standards that are both in Turkey but also in the European Union, by making sure that any delays, any barriers that we may see in the transportation, the shipment between Europe and EU companies and Turkish companies are removed. And we do a lot of practical work ourselves here. You may know that one of the biggest projects that we're running in Turkey at the moment is a railway line between, closing the link between Asia and Europe. Is a railway line between Istanbul and Bulgaria, to make sure that this last part that is still not there can be used also for freight transportation. Again, this is a very practical, but it has a big repercussion and a positive repercussion, because it shortens the transportation, and most likely it will also make it cheaper. So this is certainly something we will continue working on. So in that sense, also the entire harmonization process that we have talked before has to continue. To make sure that there is no big differences between European companies and Turkish companies. So in my view, actually, you are on a very good track. And what is, again, appreciated very often by my counterparts when they come and visit me in Ankara for European companies, they also very much appreciate the higher level of education of your labor force, young labor force, which I think is very important for, and therefore your academy, your vocational training is certainly something that you should expand and build on. Now, China, we mentioned this early on. There are a lot of thoughts given to this at the moment. Not only China, by the way. I would say any production that is so far away that any interruption of either transportation or interruption of production may affect then the consumers or the companies that import these products to the customs union. So that is certainly an important thought. And in my view, my assessment is that Turkey has a very strong card to play here. Turkey is part already of the customs union with the European Union. Turkey is very familiar with European businesses, has very close business contacts. So any relocation from further away parts of the world to Turkey is also certainly to the advantage of European companies. I don't know what their business plans are. I don't know what they're going to do. This is for me simply a logical answer that I want to give you, a practical answer that I want to give you. But we are not, as you know, as institutions or as member states of the European Union, we don't tell our companies where to go and what to produce. We simply want to help and create the necessary environment in which it is more sustainable and more suitable and better for them to invest. So I would think logic and the current situation may dictate that this indeed should happen, that there should be a relocation of some of these strategic productions.
Teşekkür ederim.
Teşekkür ederim Sayın Büyükelçim. Söz almak isteyen var mı? Birol Bey, Yönetim Kurulu üyemiz Sayın Büyükelçim. Buyurun Birol Bey, mikrofonunuzu açın.
Sayın Başkanım, Sayın Büyükelçim, şimdi bütün gözümüzle göremediğimiz küçücük bir virüs dünyayı alt üst ederken bütün insanlığın ve bütün milletlerin de kendisine çekidüzen vermesi gerektiğine inanıyorum artık. Bu bize belki de hayati bir ders çıkartacak bir vakadır. Sayın Büyükelçim, KOBİ'ler Avrupa Birliği politikalarında ve fonlarında özel bir yere sahiptirler. Pandemi sürecinin ekonomik sıkıntılarını atlatmak için Türk KOBİ'leriyle AB KOBİ'leri ne tür işbirlikleri yapabilirler? Çok teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank you very much. SMEs are for us in the member states of the European Union, but certainly also in Turkey, the backbone of the economy. Not only the backbone of the economy, but also the biggest generator of employment. So they are very important to support this SMEs. And as you say, they have a very important place in the economy. And many of the projects that we have been running in Turkey over the last 10 years focus very much on SMEs. This ranges from the things that I mentioned already before, making sure that the necessary standards and regulations are being applied, but also to enhancement of capability, of training, of entrepreneurship, and we have quite a lot of programs with various ministries and with UNDP. And with top and other business organizations and representatives of trade organizations to strengthen this role of SMEs across the country and in cooperation with the European and their counterparts there. So I think the most important, if you ask what both can do together, I mean, make sure that the links, the trade links work and function, make sure that the necessary environment and framework for continuing this relationship is protected and remains, or is even strengthened in response to this situation. And on the European side, I mentioned already, the European Investment Bank will now launch quite a substantial investment program for SMEs. They can take support from there. So the moment you have strong SMEs, of course, also on the European side, that attract imports from Turkey or that require production or support from Turkish companies in their production. Of course, it will be also for the benefit of Turkey itself. So this link, this coordination and cooperation between the SMEs is certainly something that we need to support and foster in the future. And we also need to see how, on the more formal side, on the more organizational side, the business-to-business contacts, the business dialogue that we established between the European Union and Turkish business community, how we take this forward. We haven't had a meeting this year, but I hope we can have a meeting very soon to make sure that these contacts also at that level, at a more structural level, the institutional level, will be supported and that will continue.
Teşekkür ederim efendim.
Teşekkür ederim.
Başkanım, bir de ben söz alabilir miyim?
Buyurun Ercan Bey.
Merhaba, ben Ercan Ata, Ankara Sanayi Üretim Kurulu üyesiyim. Türkiye Odalar ve Borsalar Birliği Sektör Meclisi, Mobilya Sektör Meclisi Başkanıyım. Türkiye'deki Mobilya Federasyonu'na başkan yardımcısıyım. Kusura bakmayın, Eskişehir'deyim. Bir toplantı için geldim. Eskişehir Organize Bölgesi'nde, onun için hareket halinde toplantıya katılabildim. Sayın Büyükelçim, biz Avrupa Birliği'nde mobilya anlamında işbirliğimizi artırmak istiyoruz. Özellikle şirket evlilikleri ve beraberce ne yapabiliriz konusunda hızlı girişimlerde bulunmak istiyoruz. Şu anda Amerika ile bununla ilgili çalışmalarımız var. Siz de farkındasınız. Amerikan Ticari Büyük Bakanı buraya geldiği zaman mobilya sektörünü özellikle öncelikli sektörlerden birisi olarak belirledi. Aslında Avrupa Birliği bizim coğrafya olarak daha yakınız. Almanya'dan sonra Polonya'ya çok önem verildi. Polonya'da üretim var ve ihracat var. Avrupa Birliği'nde mobilya ithalatı da çok fazla var. Artı aslında kazı kazan bir ilişkimiz var. Biz mesela sektör olarak sizden kumaş alıyoruz İngiltere'den. İtalya'dan mobilya aksesuarlar alıyoruz. Ve burada emek yoğun işleri biz yapıyoruz. Aslında bu birlikteliği Çin'e karşı da daha büyütebiliriz, daha da geliştirebiliriz. Avrupa Birliği projelerinden de çok fazla faydalanıyoruz. Dernek olarak, sektör, STK'lar olarak ona da teşekkür ediyorum. Özellikle marka anlamında da yatırım yapabiliriz. Bunu nasıl beraber geliştirebiliriz? Bize nasıl destek olursunuz? Bunu öğrenmek istedim. Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you. I think what you're doing now will be the future, being very mobile and taking part from anywhere in such discussions. No, thank you for the questions about the sector of furniture production. I think any cooperation or any closer link in any sector is something that we certainly support. I don't know much about the more institutional links and how much you engage also with the individual member states on that. But whatever I can do and I can help you also to establish contacts either with organizations in the European Union, with trade organizations, or with my colleagues in Ankara, the ambassadors and the trade counselors, I would be very happy to do this and also to learn more about the specific needs, or if you can share with us any problems that you may have encountered in increasing the relationship in the furniture sector with the European Union. There might be something that our Department for Trade could be of help. So any more detailed information on this would be very helpful. But as it is with many other sectors, we will be certainly very supportive in strengthening the relationship and you having better business opportunity in the European Union with furniture productions as well.
Çok teşekkür ederim Büyükelçim.
Teşekkür ederiz. Sayın Büyükelçim, dışarıdan gelen sorularla ilgili Yavuz Bey bir şey söyleyecekler mi acaba?
Sayın Başkanım, Sayın Büyükelçim, çok sayıda soru geldi. Ama bir saati de geçtik. Müsaade ederseniz belki birkaç tanesini ben size arz edeyim. Hepsini söylersem herhalde epey vakit alır. Sayın Büyükelçim, yeni fonlardan bahsettik. Yapısal fonlardan. Soru birazcık da katılım öncesi işbirliği fonları ile ilgili. AB'nin Türkiye'deki ulaştırma, yatırım ve insan kaynaklarına yönelik orta ve uzun vadedeki yatırım ve finansman desteğine ilişkin politikalar hakkında bilgi verir misiniz şeklinde bir soru var. Tekrar bunları sıralayayım birkaç tanesine Sayın Başkanım.
Hepsini söyleyin de Yavuz Bey,
Tamam.
Sayın Büyükelçim bir kere cevap versin.
Tamam. Başka soru. Ülkemizde ciddi sayıda nitelikli ve genç iş gücü bulunmaktadır. Siz zaten konuşmanızda da bahsettiniz buna. AB-Türkiye ilişkileri bağlamında bu iş gücü için fırsatlar söz konusu mudur? Bir başka soru. Salgın dönemi sosyal güvenlik sistemleri üzerinde de önemli etkiler yarattı. Sosyal güvenlik sistemleri ve sosyal devlet anlayışı üzerinde yeni yaklaşımlara ihtiyaç var mıdır? Atlıyorum, çok var. Bir tane daha sorayım Sayın Büyükelçim. Avrupa Komisyonu'nun önceliklerinden biri de Avrupa için dijitalleşme çağıdır. Yine siz de bahsettiniz konuşmanızda. Bu kapsamda dijital dönüşüm ile işletmelere yeni fırsatlar sunması hedeflenmekte ve iklim değişikliği ve çevre gibi sorunların çözümünde de dijital çözümlerin benimsenmesi teşvik edilmektedir. Türk sanayisi de güçlü altyapısıyla bugüne kadar gerçekleştirdiği çalışmalarla dijital çözümlerin geliştirilmesine önemli bir potansiyel taşımaktadır. Bu itibarla dijitalleşme konusunda Türk firmaları ile Avrupa Birliği firmaları arasında işbirliğini arttırmak için somut önerileriniz var mıdır? Teşekkür ediyorum başkanım.
Thank you very much. These are all very good and very important questions. Let me go through them one by one. Now, on new funds, what I've been talking about were the funds that the European Union itself is now raising in support of the economy in the European Union and some of our partner countries around the world that have been hit hardest by the crisis. So this is, as I said, a combination of loans or supported loans and grants, but also a massive procurement program of the European Central Bank when it comes to security. So that's on the European side foremost. Now, the pre-accession funds that you have mentioned, first of all, we are currently ending the so-called IPA 2 or the instrument for pre-accession phase 2, which is coming to end in 2020, and in 2021 we will have a new phase, and this new phase is linked not only to, as we would call it, an IPA 3, but it's also linked to the new budget of the European Union, because as you may know, the European Union has a 7-year budget, or a program for about 7 years, and the next period starts in 2021, and we are now in the middle, hopefully very soon, ending the discussion about the future budget. And this discussion about the future budget is, of course, very much impacted now with the needs that have arisen with the corona crisis. So there is a debate whether the European Union should have a bigger budget, spend more money in supporting the economy. There's also a debate on how the money should be raised for this budget, either through direct taxes of the European Union or through member states' contribution. So there's a big debate going on among the member states, and as I said, hopefully in one of the next meetings of the European Council, we will have more clarity and we will know what is going to happen. Now, the difference between IPA 2 and IPA 3 will be that in IPA 3, we will have no country allocations as we have now under IPA 3, but under IPA 2, but we will have allocations for certain sectors and areas. And this is a lesson that we've learned from previous periods, we want to support mature projects that are ready, projects that have an impact, projects that are in line with Turkey's and the European Union development goals. So this is the principle, a couple of principles of what is going to happen in the future. We also, I think the future, because you mentioned transportation, the future will also show that we may be moving away from supporting massive infrastructure programs. We would not support them, certainly no longer simply with grants, as we're doing at the moment. And I mentioned that the Harikari-Kapipole railway line is the biggest infrastructure project that we're at the moment supporting, with close to 300 million euros. But that I don't see really in the future anymore. But what I will see in the future is that we will do what is generally understood and called blending. So a blending between a grant component and a loan component from an international financial institution. And I actually believe that a bigger amount of money can be raised that way, because the grant component is leveraging then the loan component. So this can be used even for bigger infrastructure transportation project, as you say. Same is on human resources. We have done a lot of investment in the growth and investment sector, as we call it, supporting the training and the skills enhancement of people who work in that area. We will continue doing it. We will continue focusing on education. So education will be one of the main aspects, and under our facility for refugees in Turkey, and many of your chambers in Turkey cooperate on that. We do a lot of work already, skills enhancement for vulnerable group of people, so on human resources. The point that you made about young people, which is the next point, again, is quite important. We have a program that I'm sure you're familiar with. It's called Erasmus, which was originally designed for students, for university students, but we have now moved on from that. It's now called Erasmus Plus. And under Erasmus Plus, any young people who want to spend some time outside the country in Europe can avail him or herself of this opportunity and do that. So this is training somewhere, getting specific skills, getting a vocational training, working for an NGO, working for a counterpart of wherever you are now at the moment. So Erasmus Plus is really catering for any young people who want to enhance their skills in the broadest sense. So not only university training, the broadest sense, and want to move abroad. And of course, We also have to see what are the opportunities for making this easy. So there will be financial support under the Erasmus Plus system, and we have very good success with Turkish young people. So more than 500,000 young Turkish people have taken part in these programs over the last years. And obviously, we hope to expand this even further. And there is one good news under this new budget discussion that we are having now for the next 7 years. Member states and the European Parliament have already indicated that we will double the budget that will be available under these programs, because we see this is a very important way of bringing people together, opening up, giving opportunities, and obviously, from my experience, this is also a very important antidote to anything that is racism or xenophobia or any other fear of the other, fear of somebody you don't know. So by doing this, I think you reduce this as well. Therefore, I think Erasmus is one of our most successful programs. Now, social security and healthcare. Let's start with the good news. And the good news is that both in the European Union and in Turkey, we are lucky that we have a social security structure and system that has served as a safety net to many people. When you look at some other countries, you don't see this. So many people have fallen through the cracks and find themselves now without employment and without any social security support and any health insurance. So I think in Europe and in Turkey, in European Union and Turkey, we have avoided that. And I think that is certainly something we need to factor in our lessons learned, and most likely, first of all, keep this that way, and maybe even strengthen it. Now, on health, we had a debate with the Minister of Health last week, and one of the points that he made, Turkey would like to increase or strengthen its health tourism, or the health industry in general. And also in my travels through the country, I've heard in many places, I mean, where you have a hot spring, or where you have a special hospital or special care for things that health tourism should be encouraged. And I've always suggested to people who have talked to me about this to get in touch with European health insurers, because ultimately they decide where they are sending patients for treatment. And I'm sure arrangements can be made. And from my previous postings in other countries, I know, for example, that European health insurers then send people for skin treatment at the Dead Sea, or in other places around the world where there's a special offer, there's a special treatment possible for special diseases. So I think again, I would encourage to have a close contact or engagement between European health insurers and health systems and Turkish health systems. Social security. Coming back to social security, I think what countries around the world will have to think about how we can continue financing this and make sure that the system can be resilient and strong enough to take any further blow like that we're seeing at the moment. Now in digitalization and new opportunities, I would think at the moment the sky is the limit. So any ideas, any proposals for engagement would be very welcome. Yes, there will be a lot of investment by the European Union in companies that are going in direction, that are promoting digitalization, that are coming up with new technology, coming up with new ideas and systems. I think there will be also just looking at our meeting now, there will be a new industry emerging, different meeting industry, how to bring people together. It will have an impact, of course, on the tourist industry, in the sense that there will be less flights and maybe less hotel rooms needed when you have a conference like this. So there's always a plus and a minus, maybe. But overall, I think it will be a plus that many companies will now be more resilient, develop new ideas, develop new business models and modalities. And I think whatever we can do, also in cooperation with Turkey, would be very glad to do that, and also exchange necessary information and lessons learned. And again, coming back to what I mentioned earlier on, use the structures that we have, this business engagement, the business structures that we have built up in the last few years, between European business representatives and Turkish business representatives. And I think this digitalization could be one of the subjects for one of the future discussions that we have in this forum.
Sayın Büyükelçim, epey vaktinizi aldık. Müsaade ederseniz son soruyu ben sorayım Yavuz Işık Bey'e, Meclis Başkan Yardımcımız. Aynı zamanda kendileri Avrupa Beton Birliği'nin de başkanıdır. Sizin sormak istediğiniz veya ilave etmek istediğiniz bir şey var mı Yavuz Bey?
Evet, Sayın Başkanım teşekkür ediyorum. Sayın Büyükelçime şunu sormak istiyorum. Şimdi bu koronavirüsten sonra dünyada ticaretin şekli ve formu değişecek. Biz gördük ki sağlık altyapısı Türkiye'de oldukça iyi ve dünyanın her tarafına da bir takım ekipmanlar gönderdik. Tüm bunlardan sonra Avrupa Birliği'nde bizim full membership, bizim tam üyeliğimizle ilgili sağlık altyapısı... Öyle mi? Ha, tamam, o zaman çevireyim onu. Okey. Çevirdim onu.
Yes, he turned off his mic.
Yavuz Bey duyamıyoruz. Duyamıyoruz. Deminki
Can
daha
you hear me?
iyiydi. Deminki daha iyiydi. Duyamıyoruz. Bu alanda teknolojinin biraz daha gelişmeye ihtiyacı var herhalde. Yavuz Bey duyulmuyor. Sayın Büyükelçim teknik arıza oldu herhalde. Bize değerli vaktinizi ayırdığınız için çok teşekkür ederiz. Bugünün anısına sizin için bir ağaç diktik efendim. Ben bu sertifikanızı da Mustafa Bey'e ileteceğim. Görebiliyor musunuz bilmiyorum. Sizin için bir ağaç diktik. Ankara'da bir dikili ağacınız var efendim. Bize ayırdığınız zaman için tekrar teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate the gift because this is a very valuable gift. This will a gift that will certainly last many, many, many years. So thank you for the opportunity. It was, I think, first of all, this type of conversations are very important to understand better what is happening, also from your side, what your concerns are. And I hope I could answer some of your questions, but please feel free anytime, get in touch, send an email, send some message if you have additional questions. I'm happy and ready to, me and my colleagues in the delegation of the European, we are very happy to answer any of these questions, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again, hopefully very soon and in person.
Sayın Büyükelçim, ayırdığınız zaman için tekrar çok teşekkür ediyorum. Bizi izleyenlere de, katkı koyanlara da çok teşekkür ediyorum. Tekrar buluşmak üzere. Dediğiniz gibi en kısa zamanda yüz yüze sizi Asad'ı tekrar ağırlamak isteriz efendim. Delegasyonun bütün üyelerine de, çalışanlarına da, başta Mustafa Balcı, Profesör Mustafa Balcı'ya bu imkanı bize sağladıkları için de ayrıca teşekkür ederim efendim. Sağ olun. Görüşmek üzere.
Thank you, Mr. President, everybody else. Thank you very much. Goodbye.